gentlemen, here it comes.
150 years of combined experience. And maybe 5 or 6 worth hearing about. This is Soundwaves TMI.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Soundwaves TMI with Chasta and Mr. Dennis Willis. Woohoo! Cheers.
Hi, Chasta. Cheers.
That was not a real payoff.
Before we start, you have to tell people a story about what you're drinking.
So I have this little thing in my hand called Golden Roll Tequila Paloma, but it's only like an ounce and a half or 2 ounces. It was given to me by Modern Monsters, who were just on the set.
Right.
And I was kind of mocking him because it's a tiny little can. And I was like, oh, look at your tiny little Paloma. That's so cute. And he was like, okay, bitch, drink one. So he gave me one, and it is 52 proof.
Yeah.
This little tiny inch and a half can packs a lot of punch. And I haven't eaten today yet. So here we are.
There are so many comments.
I know.
No, you're right. Yes.
So we're going from Paloma into something pretty serious.
Yes.
I have some serious jealousy. You, sir, got to sit down with our boy Sam Chase and talk about what happened to him last year with his stroke.
For the record, I have not... What's the opposite of jealousy? It's I want you to do this interview. I didn't realize Sam was going to open up to me as much as he did.
It wasn't really planned. It just organically happened.
In the grand pantheon of Soundwaves interviewers, I'm like a distant third.
I'm not going to let you do that to yourself.
No,
Stop.
I'm not doing it to myself. You are an incredible interviewer.
Ugh.
You rock, and you and Sam have a wonderful rapport. And so as soon as he started getting conversational, I'm like, man, I wish Chasta was doing this. Because as opposed to try to think of the next brilliant thing to say, I just sit back and watch you two, and it's magic.
Aw, thank you.
But yeah, Sam is, for those who don't know, and you really need to know, Sam is one of the most talented and prolific, I think, songwriter, storytellers. His band is phenomenal. His trio is phenomenal. As a musician on the Bay Area scene, I can think of very few people who I think we would put in the category of just like amazing. I mean, he's Tom Petty, Springsteen level
That's the
storytelling.
level I put him in.
Yes.
Like very confidently.
Yeah. And last year he had a stroke.
Yeah.
And leave it to Sam to take, and I said this in the interview, leave it to Sam to take something that's tragic, monumental, huge, and turn it into art. But wait until you hear what he says. Like, you haven't heard this interview.
I haven't.
I'm going to play it right now. And this isn't like podcast bullshit. Like, you're hearing it in real time.
Yeah.
And you're going to respond to it.
Yeah.
But what he said about his experience blew my mind.
Oh my God.
Blew my mind.
Okay.
I'm just like, well, of course Sam would say that.
Well, I knew because Sam who he is, and he doesn't have secrets, and he lays it all on the line, which is one of the reasons I love him the most.
Right.
I knew he would eventually put it in song. And I've been waiting for that, to understand that experience through the lens that he provides to us. And so I'm super excited to hear it.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Welcome back to Soundwaves FM. I am Dennis Willis, and I am thrilled to be sharing the studio with one of my favorite musicians. And I'm not even talking Bay Area musician. I just mean favorite all-over musicians and a storyteller, Mr. Sam Chase of the
I'm
Chase.
thrilled to be here. And I mean...
And the untraditional.
One of the best? I mean, there's a lot of really good ones out there.
You're definitely up there, though.
Rolling Stones.
Chasta and I have talked about this. You know.
The Beatles. Led Zeppelin.
Sure, yeah. Because the Beatles didn't write about the stuff you write about.
Prince.
I don't think he did either.
Dua Lipa. Beyonce.
I don't know anything about Dua Lipa. Beyonce doesn't write her songs. Come on. What are you talking about? She's got 25 writers, and all they just repeat. You are more of a storyteller than a songwriter, in my humble opinion. I'm telling you how you do your job. But I really think, and that's why your songs are so damn powerful, whether they're rowdy party songs, and you've got some great ones, whether they're introspective songs that just will stop you on a dime, stop me on a dime, and just make you think about life and and just ponder all this. And recently you had a life-changing experience that you would stop any of us in our tracks, if not have completely devastating consequences. And you have, as you do, channeled that into art. And I want to go back about a year, and we can tell people the story, and we're going to play them the song, which we're premiering here, and thank you very much for that. Take us back, Sam. About a year ago, you had an episode that changed your life.
Yeah, we're coming up on the year anniversary right now. I think it was around April 25th, 2023. I had a stroke. And it came out of nowhere. I didn't think that I was a candidate for anything like that. Of course, I'm a rock and roller, so I've been burning the candle at both ends for years and years and years. But, it really, really came out of nowhere. And it was an interesting experience for me in that I lost all of my ability to speak, to read, and, in many ways to think. It wore off pretty quickly, but the healing took months and months and months to kind of get back up to speed mentally and cognitively.
I mean, you seem absolutely perfect right now.
I think I'm 100% now.
Yeah.
But I think that actually only happened fairly recently, probably in the last month or two. Do I feel really fully 100% back? Within the first few months, I think I got to about 80 or 90% relatively quickly. But I think I've been kind of like hovering around 80 or 90 for a while until recently.
Because what struck me is that you were back on the road. You were back playing like maybe 6 weeks later, something like
3
that.
weeks.
3 weeks. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
my wife is here. She can attest. It was, I was out of the hospital. I was in the hospital, in my hospital bed thinking, holy hell, I got to be on the road in 2 weeks. What am I going to do? And all my doctors.
So much the same person. Like I would be laid up for whatever crazy reason, thinking I need to finish this or that. Or
yeah.
And
I was on the road. I mean, I got back on the road 2 weeks later with a super foggy brain, and desperately trying to remember all the lyrics.
Did that help or hurt your process?
I mean, whether it helped me or hurt me cognitively, that's for my doctor to figure out. But I think that emotionally, I really needed it, to get up on stage and prove that I could still do it. My doctor did say, get out there, do all the things that you usually do. We need to get your brain back up to speed. And so throwing me in the deep end was the only way I knew how to do it.
You had previously mentioned your life's path and partying and things, and you said you didn't think you were a candidate, probably because of your age. But you've also suggested, when we've talked about this, how behaviors might have affected this. I don't know anything about strokes, so it sounds to me like, were you suggesting that maybe some of the choices you'd made have led here, or is this just a random thing that the body does?
I mean, I think we're in many ways a byproduct of the choices that we make in life. But the reason why the stroke happened, we found out, was due to a thing called a PFO, a patent foramen ovale, which is a congenital heart defect that affects 1 out of 3 people. This is going to scare a lot of people right now.
Wow.
1 out of 3 people have this birth defect, but that doesn't mean that 1 out of 3 people are going to have a stroke because of it. It truly is the perfect storm where a blood clot may form somewhere in the body, most likely the leg, go up into your heart, make its way through this little hole called the PFO that shouldn't be there, and go into the wrong chamber of the heart, shoot up to your brain, and give you a stroke.
Did you know you had a hole in your heart prior to this?
No, and if I didn't have a stroke, I wouldn't know it my whole life.
Wow.
Most people don't know that they have this hole, but most people will never be affected by it. It's not an issue in the majority of people that have it.
Wow.
But I had the perfect storm. And we, considering that we are a byproduct of everything that we do, there's still certain things that can't be helped. And, but that blood clot formed for some reason.
I say this as somebody who's never had a stroke. You hear about it, you hear those words, you don't know what those words mean. What was it like for you to go through that moment?
Well, it was a trip, but, honestly, the way that I look back on it now, and even shortly afterwards, it was kind of the best thing that ever happened to me. In that it gave me a new perspective on how to experience being alive and experience myself. For me, I lost all the ability to speak, the ability to read, and kind of think outside of very, very short sentences for a good number of hours, and then had a foggy sense of self for weeks, if not a couple of months. But what was such a trip about it was there's certain things about, being yourself that you find that you think are inherent to being human, that in that moment for me were completely taken away. The the way that I kind of think about it is you have your brain and the things that you think, and then there's a processing center, and it goes through that processing center and then out of your mouth or into your hands and feet and stuff, and that tells you what to do. And my processing center completely shut down. The only thing that was left was everything that was inside. And the only way that I can think about it or explain it is the only thing I had left was the soul. Everything outside of the processing center isn't inherent. It's a machine. And there's a little soul inside that's kind of controlling the machine, telling the machine what to say, telling the machine what to think, telling the machine what to do with its arms and legs. And when the machine was completely shut down, everything went quiet, and I could kind of sense the sense of self, whatever that soul may be. I got to meet it and hang out with it for a while, which is something that you don't normally get to do. And to me, it was nice to meet myself for the first time and experience that. I don't want to live like that. It was nice to get the machine booted back up again and get things working. But in the end, I do feel it's kind of one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it gave me a new perspective on how to see myself, how to feel about myself, and how to approach, the future and how to take care of myself.
What an incredible perspective. Were you aware of that? Is that how you were thinking about it while you were going through it? Or is that in retrospect, that's how you saw it after the
Well, while I was going through it, I was thinking to myself, man, I sure hope this is a panic attack.
Right.
It wasn't until the next day that we realized that it was actually a stroke. But, in the hospital, I was in the hospital for 3 days, and in the hospital, I was still connected to that, for lack of a better term, that soul, that spirit, and wasn't able to still fully process, or I wasn't able to fully boot up the machine yet. So I got to sit with it for a few days, and it was really nice. And so I was trying to soak it all up while I had it, because I knew it was going to go away. I knew I was going to get better. As the machine was booting back up, neural pathways were being rewritten in my brain, and I was able to think in longer sentences and being able to read and send texts. And, so I knew things were going to get back up to normal eventually. So I wanted to be able to give myself the time to fully experience whatever this was, what was happening to me.
That whole conversation was so fucking Sam Chase.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
You did great. I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Whatever, dude.
No, seriously. You had great questions. You were super right there toe to toe with him. And let's just talk behind the curtains for a second before we get deep. Is you do have time constraints. That was on the radio.
Right. And I had my boss in my head going, people aren't going to listen to a 10-minute interview.
Right. But your boss also happens to love Sam Chase. So, there's that. Yeah. Okay. So that being said, you obviously could have gone on with him for 30 or 45 minutes.
Oh, of course.
But what I struggle... Oh, here it comes. What I struggle explaining about Sam and his music is that I feel like people say if you could put that in a bottle, right? Mm-hmm. If you could capture that, it would be like this. To me, he has magic in him to capture the essence of living and put it into a song. Yeah. All the most intense emotions, like the one I'm feeling right now, all the most intense emotions that we have, right? Like the excruciating breakups, or the new life when you have a kid, or, the night you're really stupid drunk and, and you have a really good time. I remember seeing, I said this in an interview with him, after I saw him in Tahoe. Mm-hmm. And I remember standing in a barn in the middle of nowhere in Tahoe. I don't even know where we were. It was you got there a latitude and longitude. It was that. I'm not even kidding. And we were in the middle of a barn, and there were 50, 75 people there. And every person was just at his every word. And it's just because he can do that. He can make you feel on such a real level. He has this ability to make you feel like you're bulletproof and 10 feet tall. Like I'm a couple beers in, I'm dancing around to Sam Chase and life will never fucking end. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like that's what he does to me. And it's like, that's why I asked him to play my funeral.
Yeah.
That's why you're hearing emotion right now.
Right.
Because it's like when it all comes down, like nobody's going to put it into words like him.
You know, I hate to invoke the boss again, but I'm a huge Springsteen fan.
Yeah.
And he will stop. You don't ever know when it's going to come, but he'll stop in the middle of one of his shows and he'll tell a 5-minute story and you're hanging on every word and it's like the perfect entry point to whatever this song is going to be.
Yeah.
But you realize like, oh no, he's writing about joining a band in 1965, but this story is going to end 50 years later where the guy who called him up dies and he's the last person alive still from that band. You don't realize the emotional whoomp that you're going to get at the end of the sentence. The only other performer that I've seen in the rock and roll space to do that, to me, is Sam Chase.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, so many times we've talked to him and we've put him in that boss, Tom Petty, Bob Dylan. But like, honest to God, I mean, some of these songs like almost out hit me. You know what I mean? Like, I just think there's a way to hit somebody in the feels about the most important things in life.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and the way he talks about like meeting himself.
Yes.
You know, we're going really deep here and this is super personal, but you know, it's the pod. I feel safe doing this. And this is all stuff you've already heard personally. Sure. But like this year's been really hard because like I lost a really close friend and, it just made me really reflect on like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I remember standing in the cemetery over her open grave and putting a white rose down on her casket. She's 49, by the way. 49. Died out of nowhere. And, you know, Sam is lucky because this was a warning shot. Right. It was a warning shot over the bow.
Right.
He came back from this.
Yeah.
But all of us are not so lucky, you know? And so that's been a wake up call. It's been a wake up call for like the obvious stuff, like health. Like you and I have been talking a lot about that.
Sure.
About health and taking care of yourself, but also just about the important shit. Like these moments.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it back together.
It's totally understandable, and Sam does that. You know, I mean, to be able to, with words, to drill down and to capture the essence of that moment. You know, it's really unparalleled, and you know, and he's going to be embarrassed, or this show will feed his ego. Either way, either way.
I hope a little bit of both, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, take it, Sam.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, it's true. Like. Getting it back together, like it does make you think about what's important, like, you know, because there's just so much rat race shit that we all do. And I feel like in 2024, we're all so involved in our phones or our to-do list or whatever. I mean, we do that. We're like, okay, we got to do an episode. We got to do a podcast. We got to do all these things. Like, it's so natural to do that. But when something like that happens, like a stroke for him, I'm only assuming, or a death to a close loved one, you're like, it just makes everything so real. There was something where he was talking about in that interview where he was saying like it's almost the best thing that's ever happened to him. He almost sounds like he misses it in some way because there's like there's these moments in life that make everything so clear. I'll give you an example. When my dad passed away in 2006, I remember that year just was insane. It was totally insane. Like my dad passed away. I was getting a divorce. I got into a bad car accident. I got evicted from my apartment. My morning show I was on got fired. Like it was so crazy. And all that happened in like 4 months. But the clarity that I lived in, because the grief I was in just made all the tertiary bullshit fall away. And everything was so crystal clear. Like every day my eyes were so wide open. And I think that's what he's saying there. It's like after his stroke, he's with himself and he can see everything so clearly. Right. And it's that clarity that I think after something shocking to you like that, like I almost miss that grief. If that sounds so strange, But I remember being so deep in grief that year, 2006. I look back on it almost fondly because I was so in tune with everything that mattered.
It's really interesting you say that because there are a few markers in my life, my first marriage falling apart, my father dying suddenly, and all the anger I had about that because, it was a hospital accident.
Yeah.
And so, but I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't remember yesterday.
Yeah,
you know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah,
there is a clarity, you're right. I never really thought about it in those terms. And I, since you're bearing your soul.
Sorry.
And I don't want
I do
No,
that.
no, and I don't live super publicly. I don't. We've talked about this. So stuff that I'm going through, I go through, and I'll tell you about it later. Yeah. But I'm actually kind of looking into a few things that I'm a little concerned about myself. Yeah, as you know, we've talked about this, and those moments of not knowing. So I'm getting an idea of what it is, and I'm getting an idea that I'm not so scared. But at first, I was kind of terrified.
Well, there's the waiting period.
That's it. Because you don't know. Like, knowledge is power. I can do a lot with the knowledge. Give me the worst news in the world. Let's deal with it.
Right.
That's me. When you don't know. And last weekend, I drove my teenager to a volunteer thing at the Railroad Museum up in Sassoon City. And I had to wait like 4 or 5 hours. And let me tell you, walking around in the parking lot for 4 or 5 hours when you don't know what's going on and that's all kicking around, you go to some dark places.
Of course you do.
And I'm just like, and yet, clarity. Because you start asking yourself questions like, what have I not said yet? What have I not said artistically? What have I not said to humans?
Yes.
What if it all stops right now?
Yes.
What is left on the table?
I mean,
my dad died with a full desk of shit he was working on. And that was one of the most visceral, long-lasting things is walking into his office after it was all done, and there's the book he's reading, and there's the tab that's open on the computer, and there's all this stuff that he was in the middle of.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I in the middle of? I'm in the middle of everything.
Yep.
I'm in the middle of everything. As was Sam, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's how I felt when my dad, you and I have similar stories with our dads passing away very unexpectedly. My dad, same story. When I went into his house to clean out his stuff, like the cigarette that he had just put out was in his ashtray, which, fun fact, you won't be surprised. Your macabre little darling over here has that in a Ziploc in her attic right now. Because of course I do. But like, yeah, you're right. It was like everything was just as it was. And that shows like that thin veil between here and not here. You know, and we all go about every day as if it's not coming, and we should. Like nobody wants to live their life like, the end is near. Right. Like you don't want to do that.
Right.
But I think in some ways, maybe you do want to have a tinge of that because it does push you to end every conversation with "I love you."
Yes.
To say the thing, you know.
I started doing that after my dad passed away. I tell everybody I love them. I make it awkward among my friends now.
Absolutely.
You know, and I've trained them all. Like all my dude friends now, there's going to be an "I love you" at the end of this. I hope you're ready for it.
Right. Which you and I do without any question at all. That's no big deal. Yeah. But you're right. Some people weren't raised with that, aren't used to that, and they don't know how to deal with that. And I would take it upon ourselves to make people used to that, to say the thing. You know, Baby Huey says this to me all the time, and I love it. I don't know where he got it, but it's so beautiful. He always says, give people their flowers now.
Oh, nice.
And he's right, you know, like say the thing now. His mom also tragically passed when he was like 22 or 3. My dad, when I was 24. How old were you when your dad passed?
I was 44, and we buried him on my 45th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I don't think I knew that piece of it.
That was the only day that was available. It was this day or this day, and I'm like, that's my gift to him, is my birthday.
Yeah. You know? Wow, that's remarkable. Wow. Yeah, so Huey always says that. He always says, because he has that same exact reflection that we have about our parents, you know, that you got to give people their flowers while they're here. So that was beautiful. You did a great job. You didn't.
Yeah.
You brought me to tears, of course.
Sam brought you to tears. Come on, let's be real here.
You and Sam got me there.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, look, I think we both are selfishly can say that we are very glad that Sam Chase is still walking this planet.
Yes.
And we'll take that experience that he had and all the knowledge and clarity that it brought to him and bring us that. I look forward to more of that. I think there's more to the story.
They say pay it forward. And I think in Sam sharing his honesty with us over the years, and inviting us to his wedding,
Yeah.
being able to stand in front of his favorite people after going through an ordeal like this. And then, if he's sharing it with us, then what we can do is pay it forward by telling the people who we love that we love them, and to giving people flowers.
That's right.
Now.
That's right.
You know?
Amen to that. I think that's a good place to end.
There you go.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We love you, Sam.
Soundwaves TMI, featuring Chasta, Dennis Willis, and yours truly, Stephen Kirk. The part of the announcer was played by Kelly Ogden. Soundwaves TMI is presented in part by the Longboard Bar in Pacifica, California, a world-class music venue and neighborhood bar, all under one roof. So please like and subscribe to Soundwaves TMI wherever you are listening from. And please consider helping us continue our mission of lifting and supporting independent music and the Bay Area music scene by becoming a Soundwaves patron. In exchange, you'll be the first to see and hear weekly shows such as Soundwaves TV, Soundwaves FM, and the Soundwaves TMI podcast, as well as exclusive content. Just go to patreon.com/SoundwavesTV. And for all things Soundwaves, follow us on all the social medias at Soundwaves TV, or go to soundwavestv.com.